Um, so let's quickly start the stream. I'm gonna go over a few things that I want to show you guys. We can maybe look at some tickers, but I'm not all too sure if it make that. Okay, what I want to do today is I want to do something slightly different than usual. Let me do it on this side of the chart. I want to do something slightly different than usual. I don't usually go into what's it called? I don't usually go into diagonals and into channels and all this stuff all too much. Because I know even though I'm gonna explain it, it is something pretty niche that not a lot of people want to use. So I usually kind of gloss over it. I do use it sometimes, I draw them, I explain things, but not all that much. Today, what I want to show you guys is I want to give you guys a different perspective on what BTC currently looks like. Because we've all seen the regular levels, right? For example, if you go onto the weekly, we can all draw a little line over there. Hey, that is the top of an order block in the past. That's going to be a very important level. Sure, we can all do that. But there's a lot more ways we can look at BTC. So I want to show you guys a few extra ways. And I want to show you guys a different perspective using diagonals and using channels. Yeah, good morning, Caleb. I also missed one today. I was looking to take this one. So long in this box stops below this one. Very sad. But yeah. So that is what I want to go over today. So let's get into that. So what I want to start with is I want to start with a fan. And the way we draw fans is very simple. The way we draw fans is almost identical to the way we draw fibs. They just look a lot more complicated, but they are almost the same thing. So let's look at fans. The way we start drawing these is I'm going to take a very important swing low and a very important swing high. Usually with fans, it's very important to remember to use things from already completed moves. That makes them a lot more accurate. So in this case, what I'm going to use is I'm going to use the previous cycle. Because we can, for certain, say that the previous cycle is already done. So I'm going to use the COVID lows. And I'm going to use the previous cycle highs. The levels I'm going to use are just regular fib levels. These are the fib levels you can see on any preset. And that's what we're going to look at. For clarity's sake, I'm going to disable most levels. As you can see, this is what they look like if you want to see a screenshot or whatever. I'm going to disable most of them because I want to focus on a few things specifically, and keeping the chart clear is going to make that a little easier to follow. So, when we look at diagonals, as you can see in the past, these diagonals have been working pretty well. Even in our current range, what you can see right now is, hey, what are we rejecting off of? When we look at our current price action from a high time frame point of view, right? When we look at high time frame diagonals, which is how I like to use them, what do we see? What we're seeing right now is we are seeing one retest of this diagonal, a bearish retest of this diagonal, followed by a liquidity grab outside of the diagonal, followed by a low time frame structure shift. This is very important because what this says is this. We have tested a very important level. You can look at this almost the exact same way as you would use any other level, like any support, any resistance. You can look at it the exact same way. So we tested the level. This is normal, right? You test it, you consolidate further. That is completely fine. This tells us nothing. This liquidity grab is the first sign we have that is pretty bearish. This is a bad sign, because if you start consolidating below resistance and you see that liquidity grab to the upside, that is telling us, hey, we are taking shorters out, but we're closing so far below our level, and our candle has such a large wick with such a small candle body. This is very bearish. So that's the first sign that is telling us, okay, maybe we are not ready to go above this level yet. And the second, and this was the reason why I was mainly looking for shorts in the first place, is this. After that, after this rejection, what you can see is we have a very important swing low on a lower time frame, right? This is a low time frame low. And we managed to close candles below it. And not just one, but after that we go slightly above it, we go back lower, we close even more candles below it. This is showing us that it almost the exact same opposite as we have over here. Over here, we clearly don't belong above the level. because we can see one wick close way below and we drop. Over here, what we can see is, hey, we have multiple closes below this level. This is telling us this is essentially just a low time frame structure shift, and this is telling us that the market is a lot more bearish than it used to be on a lower time frame, right? I'm not talking about a high time frame here. What we do after that is we go back for another retest and we get another drop. Now, this is very standard price action for a rejection. If we keep consolidating, the story changes. If we keep consolidating, this would simply be consolidation below resistance in an uptrend, which is bullish. But as of now, this is showing us a lot of low time frame signs of rejection. So that is the first way I wanted to showcase to look at this, is when you look at very high time frame diagonals and what we're doing to that on a low time frame, this looks pretty bad. This is not something you want to see. Now, the other thing I wanted to talk about before I get into the actual conclusion, right, what we can actually do with this, is Fib channels. And Fib channels are slightly different from the other Fib tools. Fib channels are really good at telling you a story. For example, if I want to, let's say, measure a bull market, there is no tool or no style of TA that can actually tell me that. Because how would you measure something so abstract? However, Fib channels are drawn from two pools, or 3 dots. We start with a high and a high, or a low and a low. So you start with 2 equals and then a different one. So in this case, we start with the high and a high, and we draw the last point to the low in the middle. This is how you use channels. You take 3 important points that kind of form a V shape, right? And you place it high, high, low. If your channel is going to look all weird, you're probably doing high, low, high. When we look at this channel, we can look at this and say, okay, I want to look at this as a range. That is all I use it for. I don't necessarily use the other lines in the channel. They do work, but I personally only use them on a high time frame, so I don't like it. What I use them for is to look at it as a range. And what do we do with a range? Ranges are pretty simple. In essence, what you want to be doing is you want to be buying range lows, you want to be selling range highs, and you want to be taking TPs at range mid, or scalp trades. You don't want to actually enter proper trades here, but you can take scalp trades. So what do we see when we go back to our current area? First, what we saw here was, this is why I'm going to start the story, right? We can do it for the past as well. But what we saw here is we touched range lows, and we had a very good close above it. After that, we broke out of range mid, broke out of range high, we started consolidating above it, went back, lower back into the range, retested range mid, now we're going back higher. We have reclaimed range highs, now we're going back higher. However, currently, we are sitting at that deviation pocket on the same range. If you guys know how I trade ranges, or how I like to trade ranges, usually I try to look for these types of parts, right? I try to look for the outer ranges. So 1, 2, 7, 2s and 1, 3, and 4s, these blue lines. Because usually when you have a range that consolidates like this, if you go outside of it and you reject that, you're probably going to go back into the range. So currently, this is the level we're at. And considering that we're consolidating a bit, we can look at this in a few ways. If we keep consolidating, same story as last time, same story as with the diagonals, that is going to be consolidation in an uptrend below resistance, which is good. That is showing us that, hey, even though we're close to resistance, clearly we are willing to like kind of buy back and forth. That is good. However, until that happens, right, until we keep consolidating for a while, as of now, this is bearish price action. This is us touching a level, breaking low time frame structure, making another low high. This, as of now, is the beginning of a downtrend on a lower time frame. So, with that said, what I wanted to go to is this. If we zoom out, and we zoom out to this time frame, we can look at this in a few ways. And I want to say, if you think the market's going to go higher, that is perfectly fine. Because personally, I honestly think so too. I think the market's going to go higher. However, when you look at a chart like this, there is no reason to be consistently buying right here. This is not where you buy. No matter how you look at this, you are at a very important level of resistance. This is very clearly resistance. You do not want to buy resistance. Even if you think the market's going to go higher, this is not the place to be buying. Where do we want to be buying? We want to be buying after we flip this level to support. It's that simple. Now, when we do that, what you're going to see is this. Let me actually just use the percentages. Let's say we buy at current market price, right? We would buy right now. Our actual invalidation, right? We can place stops around these wicks, but that wouldn't truly be invalidation, right? Because clearly the idea is, hey, we've broken out of the range. I think we're going to go higher. The invalidation to that would be going back into the range. Your actual invalidation is 10% away, which isn't all too bad, right? But it's not too good either, especially considering we're on BTC right now. If you were to buy right now, your actual invalidation is going to be about 10% off. Now, let's say you buy slightly higher. We're going to buy once we flip this level to support. So we're going to buy 2% higher, which in theory would be bad, right? You want to buy as low as possible. What would our invalidation be if we flip this to support, if we buy on that flip to support? At that point, our invalidation would simply be flipping it back to resistance. So our stop loss, our invalidation, would also only be 2%. Instead of a 10% stop loss, we would only have an about 2% stop loss. So looking at it from a risk management perspective, there is no reason to be buying a lot right here. Even if you think the market is going to go up, because I'm in that boat too, I think the market's going to go up. There is no reason to buy it. What we want to be looking for is, one, a pullback. If we get a pullback, we want to be buying at either this level or at this level. Both would make a lot of sense, because that way we have very easy to manage stops, right? It's going to be like 2-3%. Now, the alternative would be you want to buy if you flip this to support. Both of those would make a lot more sense. So that is what I wanted to quickly talk about during this stream. Is even if you think the market goes up, look at this from a risk management perspective. Where would you place your stops? How would you manage a trade? What is the idea behind your trade? And does it actually make sense to be buying it? Because even if you don't get a very major pullback, there will always be a pullback. If you break out of levels, you're going to retest those levels. So that's what I wanted to talk about first. To just give a quick, very high time frame point of view of where we're at. And after that, I want to go look at some tickers. So on everything we've talked about so far, are there any questions about that? Or anything you guys want to know? No? Okay, that's good. Okay, in that case, what I wanted to look at today is I wanted to look at some tickers. I mainly want to look for exactly what we just explained, right? I think the market looks good on either a pullback or on a flip to resistance to support. So if you guys have any tickers you want me to look at, please put them in chat and then we can take a look at those. Until then, I'm gonna what's it called? Eve, please. Yeah, sure. Let's look at Eve. I'm gonna look at Eve twice, okay? I want to give you two charts. The first one is gonna be really, really simple. What I want to do first is this. I want to look at the Eve chart like this. So the way I currently look at Eve is like this. On a very high time frame. I'm going to get into more low time frame stuff later, so you can actually have a trade that is a bit more feasible. The way I look at Eve is like this. Are you not looking to get into another BTC short? I am, but it's going to be more difficult to execute, so I'm waiting a bit. I can't actually give the BTC short right now. Because it's probably going to be up here. But the way to look at Eve is this. I want to look at Eve in two ways. The first one is going to be rather simple, and that is going to be like this. It doesn't happen a lot on a high time frame that you have two almost equal levels, right? We have a very clear range high. We have a kind of range setting candles. We have one test and another test. We now have 3 taps of this level. This is very clearly a range. And then we look at the bottom, and when we look at the bottom, we can see almost the exact same thing. Let me just put it on that candle. So the first way I would look at ETH is like this, and there's a very simple way of doing it, right? We're going to get into harmonics and actual setups in a bit. In general, what we're doing right here is very good. ETH being able to close several candles above these levels is really, really good. There is a very simple spot play on ETH to be taken, or even leverage if you want to, and that is this. If we ever get a retest of this level, this is going to be a very easy buy. This is a very easy level to buy if you do get it. When we look at this on a very high time frame, this is a very, very obvious range, and us being able to not only get within this level, but also being able to close multiple candles above it again is showing us that we are once again accepting this range. Hey, what's up, E? So if we now go back down, and we actually retest it, and we get a good retest, this is going to be a very easy buy. Essentially, the way I would buy this is I would enter on the range over there. I would take kind of the bottom of this as invalidation. This, for me, would be a spot position, right? And I would aim towards range highs. You can always look at just range mid as a TP. Makes a lot of sense, just to TP this level. But in general, this is what I would look for. I appreciate that, E. So that is essentially the first thing I wanted to look at on ETH. On a very high time frame, this is what I would look at. So very simple high time frame outlook on ETH. That's how I would look at it. And now let's get into the more low time frame stuff. Let me go into a different chart. Yeah. Okay. So some other stuff we can see in ETH is this. ETH in this area literally has no harmonics, essentially. This area is completely dry. And the reason for that is because we don't have any place to put our B point. The only place, or the only place you can actually start making harmonics is going to be on this level. So this is the level I'm going to use, but the problem is that this X point is very, very sketchy. This is not necessarily a swing high or low, which is the reason why I haven't been taking any high time frame trades on ETH at all, because there's nothing to make here. Now, when we get to a lower time frame, that is entirely different. When we get to a lower time frame, we can see two things. First of all, the Gardy that we saw earlier, that you already saw on my charts, which would be right here. I'm just gonna mark the 786 and 886 instead of drawing out the full boxes. It's gonna be, where are they? These two. So that is the first thing we can see, right? We have a very nice bullish pattern over here, 786 over here, acting as support right now. When we look at patterns like these that have already kind of completed, right? We already had the initial reaction. What we want to look for is this. With harmonics, if an important level is touched, so in this case, we touched the 786, which is the reason why we have a pattern here. After this is touched, we want to look for a few things. If you draw a fib from A to the lowest point that was made, right, which is this blue fib, what you want to look for is those price get to the 0.382, because in harmonics, this is going to be your official TP1, and this is going to be your official TP2. When these TPs get touched, we can look for something else. If TP1 on a harmonic gets touched, what you want to be looking for is a sign of a rejection. If you start rejecting this area again, price is very likely to get back to either this wick again, so we could wick this, then go higher, or go to a level right below it. So us being able to react off of this 786 is telling us, hey, if we now start rejecting this, we have two positions to look for. We could look for a long like this, which would be something along these lines, or we could look for a long like this. Both of these would be completely fine. In general, this is what I would look for. Now, the only problem I have with showing this on stream is that this is a rather low time frame play, right? I'm currently on the 15-minute time frame. What you want to be looking for in times like these is, do you have any sign of rejection, right? Any sign of weakness. So for example, over here, if you go into a lower time frame, you will see very good candle closes. This gives you a very good entry. So you could FTC reaction like this, just enter on the candle close, but stops below the wick, which is something we do quite a lot, right? It is a bit more tricky to execute. In general, this is what I would look for. I would look for a reaction either at this level, at that 786, or at the 886. And if either of these levels reacts, that would be a really good place to look for longs. So for ETH, that's all I would look for. I would not set limits for this because of the time frame, but in general, I do like both of these setups. All right. I have time for one more coin request. So first one to put it in chat, that's the coin we're going to look at. That was literally the exact same time. Okay. Let's try and see if I can do it fast so I can do both. Okay. First, let's do Farcoin. I don't think this touched the... No, I think Petzl was faster. Here, I'll show you. You're always going to see yourself the fastest because of the way netcode works. Oh, wait. I changed my second monitor from like the right side to the left side, and now I keep tabbing into Discord. It's really annoying. Yeah, that didn't touch. Damn. Okay, so what I'll look for essentially, no, there's something to draw here. Okay, in that case, we can only resort to anti-patterns. I don't want to explain anti-patterns entirely because they're a lot more complicated usually. Yeah, there's not that much here. There is not that much. There's going to be a 3-2 touch, so we only have the 1-1-3 here to deal with. Yeah. This is the only thing I can see on Farcoin on a higher time frame. Let's draw this one out. So Farcoin is currently at essentially the only harmonic resistance I can draw on this entire chart, which is something to look out for. So when what's it called? When I look at charts like these on a higher time frame, there's essentially what I want to look for. Usually I want to look for very clear M&W shapes. Farcoin doesn't really have them, right? Because once again, there's no real B point. This is the only one you can draw. So when looking at Farcoin is actually at the only resistance I can draw on this chart. The other one would be this 886 right here. But as you can see, you did get a decent reaction, right? But then you just continued up higher. So what I would look for is this. On this chart, this is clearly a very important area, right? However, I wouldn't blindly short it here for the reason that Farcoin is just a really strong coin. There's no reason to blindly short it. So what I would look for is this. If you were to go onto an even lower time frame, right? if you start seeing low time frame short setups right over here, that is gonna instantly make it very time frame aligned, because we know on a very high time frame we're in a very important area of resistance. And same thing the other way around. If we start getting above this and you start seeing long setups over here, that's what it would take. I wouldn't take anything right now. If you are in spot from lower, I do suggest taking a bit of profit. In general, I don't think you have a setup on this right now. There's nothing here for me to look at. I do think it's a very interesting area, but you don't have anything. The only thing I could draw is going to be this. Wait, let me... No, that's going to be too low. No, there's nothing for me to draw. When I draw these XABs, this should be around 0.382 minimum, or it's essentially not going to form anything. So, I do think lower, but Potcoin is very strong, so I wouldn't actually short it here. I would wait for any short setup to appear. If you get a good short setup, it's for sure going to be like a good bet because of the way the high time frames look. But there's no setup on this right now. Yeah, there's something here to look at. I would just be careful with this area. Just wait. This is one of those areas where you kind of don't want to do anything. Just wait for a setup to appear and then take that. So I will give you this chart, but you can't really do too much with it, sadly. No setup. Unlucky. Okay. Pengu. Oh, why are we looking at Pengu? I thought it, oh, that coin. I mean, it died and came back to life. Ondo, I just posted an Ondo chart earlier. Where did I post it? What layer was it on? Was it on? Okay, I just posted an Ondo chart in my channel. So, wait, let me just link it. This one. Pengu. Okay. This chart doesn't even look all too bad. Okay. Few things I want to look at. First of all, we have a butterfly right here. And I know we broke way below it, but a nice thing about butterflies sometimes is that they form a lot of different levels. So in this case, we have a few levels that got formed over here. I'm gonna mark out this one specifically. It's a little line. We have our first level at the 1272. We have our second level at 12.414, and our last level at the 1.618. So to make it a bit easier for yourself to look at, is the first thing I want to draw. This is how I would look at it in terms of like what areas do I want to look to bid, what areas do I want to look to short. So, but as for right now, in general, I think you can easily treat this as a range. As you can see, usually you get bounces out of these boxes. These are going to be the outer edges. So until this breaks, we have no reason to assume that it's going to break. Eventually it will. However, until it does, I would recommend look at these areas, mark these areas out, look for longs over here, shorts over here. So I will mark the levels out for you as well, so they're easy to see. I think this is a very easy range to play. This is also a very nice range to play even on spot, because this is just taking it from range low to high. That's a 30% move. That's pretty good. So that's what I would look to take. I would probably take it something like this, longs like that, take it up into range highs, and this one as well. Put it right above that. This is what I would look for, essentially. Very nice play. We have a very old harmonic right over there, And as you can see, it's still forming some very good levels. So we still have a lot to work with. This is how I would look at Pengu. All right. Well, as I said, I don't have all too much time today, so I'm gonna end the stream here already. Bit of a shorter stream than usual, a lot shorter than usual, but hey, it happens. All right. Well, thanks everyone for coming. I'm gonna post the recording as soon as the stream is over, and if you have any questions, just tag me in chat, and I will see everyone next week.